Hi and welcome back to the cottage, everyone. I'm so glad that you're here today. Today I thought I would talk about some of our minimalist money habits and explain how being a minimalist family has really helped us in terms of our finances, not only in the day-to-day, but also in how we prepare for our future savings. Over the past year or so, I've begun to realize, as I'm sure that many of you have too, that prices seem to be skyrocketing. They're going up and up and up. And I know that inflation is a real thing and it has happened for a long time. It's always happening. But this rate of increase seems to be a little bit steeper than what has ever happened in my adult lifetime. And so it's kind of shocking to me. Of course, we saw lumber prices go up over 300%, and in turn, that made the housing market go crazy too. And now the cost increases have even trickled down to more day-to-day things such as grocery shopping and looking for clothing. The roots of the increase can probably be traced back to what a lot of things have been traced back to lately, and that is the global shutdown in 2020. And with that, it was just an unforeseen thing that threw the entire marketplace in a frenzy. The customers didn't know what to do. They were stockpiling toilet paper. The producers didn't know how much to produce. And in turn, everything got all mixed up. And the supply and demand chain was very severely severed for a while. And things, I think, will get back to normal. At least I hope that they will. But in the meantime, when these prices are in such fluctuation, it's really put a strain on a lot of families. And it's gotten people to really pause and think about their finances and really think how they want to have their financial future going forward. It has also gotten me to thinking about how we use money in our home and specifically how our minimalist lifestyle has affected the way that we view money. I do think that there is some sort of shift that happens when you live a minimalist lifestyle. It affects not only how you look at things, but a huge, broad spectrum of how you relate to life, and that includes money and money decisions. So if you're someone that is at a loss and struggling with how to go forward in your financial future, I hope that some of the tips I share today will be helpful to you. Now, I'm going to go ahead and preface this entire conversation by saying that I am not a financial guru. I did not go to school for finance, neither my husband or I did, and these are just some things that we have done through our life that have been beneficial to us. And though we are good with money now, I will say that there was a time in the past that we were actually pretty bad with money. And it probably didn't start resonating with us, and we didn't start making some positive traction in our financial future until the birth of our second son. And it was at that time that we were living on one income, my husband's income, and I was staying home with two little boys. And it really became a necessity that we became better with our money, because literally at the end of each month, our paycheck that we had to work with was down to zero. And it was kind of starting to freak us out because we weren't able to save any money. And so out of necessity, we became better with money. And the first thing that happened was I stumbled upon the Dave Ramsey system. Now, many of you, I'm sure, have heard of Dave Ramsey and how he talks about getting out of debt. And this was something that was very, very appealing to us as we were struggling through our finances. And although following the Dave Ramsey plan is what got us started on financially being successful, I really do believe that it was our family's minimalist lifestyle that has really helped us to thrive. The first tip that I have for you today is to just start and to believe that you can. Now, the beginning of any big endeavor is always a little bit frightening. If you're training for a race, a marathon, for example, the first few miles are always going to be the hardest, but eventually you build up to doing longer distances, and eventually it does get easier. And this was definitely the case for us when it came to our debt journey. As part of the process of shedding the debt burden that we had on our lives, we began to sell things, and we started with things that we knew that we didn't use or didn't even really like that much. A chair that was taking up space in the corner, a game that we never played with. These things were easy to get rid of. Eventually, it kind of went down to more precious items that were a little bit harder to make the decision on, but it did get easier to make these sales as time went along, and the money that we got back from them was very much worth the effort. However, during this time as we were selling things, we were realizing that especially the things that we didn't even use, If we had not bought them in the first place, this would have been even more money in our pockets because we were literally selling these items for pennies on the dollar of what we purchased them for new. And so we kind of had that mindset of, well, if we had never bought this in the first place, that money would have never left our hands and we wouldn't be getting just pennies back for it. So if you are looking to save money or you're thinking about living more minimally, either one of these endeavors is a big deal and it can be scary, but just start and try with baby steps and I promise eventually it will get easier. My second minimalist money tip is to curb shopping desires. Now, as I said, while we were getting rid of things and selling things, we started to realize that that money would have been more in our pocket had we not bought them in the first place. I've never been a huge fan of shopping. I don't like being overwhelmed with the amount of choices that are out there, but I did the occasional shopping for a home decor item here and there. And so I did have to make a shift when I became more minimal to really think about the items that were coming into my home. These days, I rarely step foot in a store. I try to minimize the contact that I have with the stores and with all the advertisements and different products that are available, because the more that these things are in front of your eyes, the more likely you are to want them. And so I try to go to the store only once per week, and that includes grocery shopping and shopping for miscellaneous items. When it comes to grocery shopping, my go-to place is definitely Aldi because the store is smaller and I can get through it quicker. The choices are more limited, which I personally appreciate because I'm not overwhelmed by all the different decisions I have to make. And let's just take a minute and talk about how quick that the checkout people are. They just whip things through so fast. You're in and out of there in no time. And so I really, really love Aldi. For household items and toiletries and all the miscellaneous things that a person needs to buy, I tend to split my time between Walmart and Target. And Target is difficult because they have so many beautiful things, and so I always try to stick to a list, have it with me, and try to stick to it. And I try to get in and out of there quickly. And of course, I also tend to not want to bring my kids because kids are also very influenced by advertisements, and a lot of the product displays are geared towards kids. And so I try to get in and out of these places as quickly as possible. When it comes to online shopping, we actually don't do a lot of that. I know a lot of people have Amazon Prime and they can just get things delivered right away. We do not have Amazon Prime. We do shop on Amazon on occasion if it's an item that we can't get at a local store, but we just tend to not need things that are so specific that we need to order them online. But if we do seek out through Amazon or another shopping source, and then we can have it delivered to our door, which means that there's less contact. But when you're shopping online, also you need to kind of keep the blinders on because there are tempting advertisements all over the place. Tip number 3, make do or do without. Now this is probably something that you've heard your grandparents say, and I have come to realize as I've gotten older how wise grandparents truly are. This tip as a minimalist family, we tend to do to a fault almost. Although we do have some items in our home that are precious and valuable to us and we take very good care of these items, about 95% of the things that we own, to us, they are just things, and they are here to serve us. They are here for us to use. And use them we do, until there is essentially no use left. As I mentioned in the video I did about 10 things our minimalist family does not do, we had a rusty old van that we drove to the ground, and that was a great example of this tip. And another example I have, I'm going to tell you about right now. About 15 years ago, my husband and I were in need of a lawnmower, and it was something that was an actual legitimate need. And unless we were going to go outside and cut the grass with our scissors, we needed a lawnmower. And so we were in the market for a lawnmower, and we went to a citywide garage sale that was held at a community center here in our town. We found a used lawnmower that was $10, and it was a really good brand. It was a mulching lawnmower, but it had a broken handle bracket, and my husband was pretty sure that he could fix it. So we brought the lawnmower home. My husband did fix it, and it ran and it ran and it ran, and it's still running. It's still with us 15 years later. Now, There have been some times where there's been some things that have broken on it. We've been able to fix it. And actually just about 2 weeks ago, the blade, one of the blades on it did crack, and we had to make a decision. Were we now going to buy a new lawnmower, or were we going to replace the blade? And we did have a discussion about this because honestly, this lawnmower is pretty old. It's pretty beat up. We could use a new one. We do have the money for a new one. But ultimately we decided that the cost to replace the blade was just so cheap compared to the cost of buying a new lawnmower. So the lawnmower is still ticking, it's still with us, we're still making do. Now, does that mean that we will never buy a new lawnmower? Of course it doesn't. At some point, probably in the very near future, this lawnmower is going to cease to operate, and at that point it is going to no longer be useful to us and it will need to be replaced. And we will make that decision when the time comes. Now, this mindset, this make do or do without, is probably the main thing that has saved us a ton of money over the years. So if there's one tip that I can give you from this entire list, this is probably the one to take the most heart of. Just really take into account, is this thing still useful to me? And if it is, even if it's not so shiny and doesn't look so great anymore, if it's still useful, go ahead and use it. Tip number 4, realize that time is money. This is probably another phrase that you have heard over and over again. As minimalists, we very much realize that each and every item that we buy will in turn be costing us time, because time is the thing that we traded in order to earn the money that we needed to buy that item. And so there is actually a direct correlation between these two things. Our oldest son is starting to make this realization for himself as he started his very first job this summer. And if there's an item that he is thinking about purchasing, he will actually verbalize the thought process behind it. So if he finds something that is $50, he will actually say, this would cost me like 5 hours of work. And it's such a simple correlation that is actually true, a true statement. But as adults, I think that we lose track of that because the numbers are so much bigger. The amount that's coming in is bigger and the amount that's going out is bigger. And so we kind of forget that there is this trade-off that happens. Most people obviously know that time is more valuable than any item that you could pull off of a store shelf, but we don't always stop and really think about that. Here in our family, we try really hard not to play the game of I worked really hard and so I deserve a new blank. The truth is, if you worked really hard, you deserve to keep the money that you earned. Tip number 5, keep track of what you have. Budgeting. I'm sure you knew that I would get to this point eventually, but it is so important. As a minimalist, I am constantly keeping a mental inventory of all the things that we have in our home, and it helps me so that I don't make any sort of impulse purchases when I'm at the store. If I see a pair of shoes that I think, oh, my daughter might like these, I can mentally think back and say, okay, well, she has 3 pairs of shoes at home, she's good, she doesn't need another pair of shoes. In the same way, budgeting is just like keeping an inventory of money. It's a way to keep track of what you have coming in so that you don't end up overspending or making impulse buys. I mentioned earlier that we used the Dave Ramsey plan to help us get out of debt. We also have been using the free every dollar budgeting system that's through their website to help us keep our finances in track and really understand the inventory that we have to work with and how we can split it up for the expenses that we have. If you are someone who is looking to set some financial goals, I would definitely encourage you to check out this free product. It has helped us realize many financial goals over the years, including purchasing the land that we built our house on, saving up money to buy vehicles with cash, and saving for adoption expenses, and so many more things. So if you're someone who is looking to save money and get some financial goals in place, I would definitely encourage you to check out this product. Well, that is it for today's video. I hope that some of these tips were helpful to you. I'm definitely not saying that if you become a minimalist that you're going to be swimming in money and life is just going to be a breeze, but there is a shift that happens when you start living more minimally, where you just look to life in general through a different lens, and that includes how you look at your finances and your money. If any of the things I shared today resonated with you, I would love to hear about it. Please comment below and we can chat. And as always, I would love it if you subscribe to this channel. I will continue to make videos about minimalism and simple living and how we live as a minimalist family of 7. Thanks for watching today, and I hope you'll stop by the cottage again really soon.